With love of country in their hearts, common sense in their brains, and working class in their veins, they're winning back America, one conversation at a time. This is Red, Right, and Real with Bella Dangelo and A.K. Kamala.
Welcome, Red, Right, and Real with Bella and AK. AK, did you ever use a Sharpie on your balls?
I can't say that I ever have.
Did you ever have a town hall meeting in the neighborhood to let all the kids in the neighborhood know how to know the difference between the ball they were kicking around, or the ladies going to the tennis court, how they were going to keep their balls separated from each other?
I did not.
Oh, come on. What the hell? You were just behind the times. I had to do some AK and I do show prep, and one of the things that I am hoping to eventually really bring into the show is what was really the signature, what I was really known for. About what set this show apart is really the humor. And I'm lost without being able to run up to a drilling rig and rely on that oil field humor. So we'll get there. We're going to eventually pull it in. That's why I did bring a clip that we're going to play. But one thing that I've been doing recently, AK, is what I call this laugh therapy. And that's why you got a couple of the videos, and hopefully next show we'll play some of them. One of them was an interesting montage. It was a joke that Ronald Reagan was talking about, that it was about a wedding shop, and a woman was shopping for her wedding gown, and she was explaining that this was her fourth wedding. AK, did you see that video? It was on my Facebook page. It's okay if you didn't.
No, I did not see it. No.
So it was interesting because I'd never seen this montage or this clip of Ronald Reagan. And so he was delicately telling this story about this woman that's getting married for the fourth time, and that the woman at the wedding shop was calmly explaining that, for your fourth wedding, you're not typically wearing white and the veil and all these things. If you want to hear this story, I'm going to leave a little bit of a cliffhanger. Go to the Bella Dangelo Show, my personal page, actually, because it's a cute little explaining about how at the end she never formalized any of the three weddings, and the fourth one she hadn't even consummated the marriage either, and the fourth one was a Democrat who literally just sat around telling her alongside the bed that for 4 years everything was going to get better. It was leading up to it was just interesting because I had not seen Ronald Reagan, but I had sent you some other things that were some pretty funny spoofs. Late night comedy has never been the same since Johnny Carson went off the air. And so when I say I give myself laugh therapy, one of the things that I've been doing recently to kind of elevate my mood, because there is just so much insanity going on, and there is so much just how far have we gone with just the whole process and the candidates? Yeah. And that's why
here's what I want to say, though. I want to push back just a little bit, Bella. Sometimes I think there's generational gaps of humor. Now, I'm 40, right? I'm technically a millennial. I'm an elder millennial, as the kids call it these days. I think that Dave Chappelle is one of the funniest human beings on earth. And back when I was 18, 19, 20, the Chappelle Show began to air. It's a sketch comedy show. And he had some of the most iconic funny bits I've ever seen in my entire life that actually shaped my generation. So sometimes I think that, like, when I hear about the Johnny Carson, like you mentioned, Johnny Carson was like the last great comedic nightly talk show. And I wouldn't disagree with that, but I think there's actually so many other comedians. You just got to find them. And I will agree, though, that sometimes what happens is like our culture change, right? All this leftism creeped in, this idea of like identity politics, and you can't say this or you can say this. That has completely corrupted what is acceptable in a polite society. But there's great comedians out there right now that put out some good stuff, but some of it can be a little on the raunchy side. But I think that's kind of like a generational difference. But I want to make sure that everyone that's watching the stream, make sure that you hit the like button. Make sure that you share this stream with your friends and family. We are growing the show. This is episode 5. It's been a fantastic run so far. We're kind of getting geared up. And like Bella said at the beginning, we're going to be showing just like a little clip. We want this to be an open conversation. We want you to feel like you're not just watching like a TV show or a nightly show. We want you to actually feel like you're involved in this process. Get to know Bella and I, understand our dynamic as we're like growing together. Because Bella, you and I have never met in person yet. Like in real life, we've never actually physically met each other yet. So I think that's a cool dynamic. But do you want to tee up what we're about to
Yeah, I do. So when you talk about raunchy, so I was laughing till I was tearing up last night. I was watching Ron White and Robin Williams, and Robin Williams was doing, that's why I thought I sent you a couple of those. He really went off on a lot of political, they were talking about the Supreme Court, and I can't remember who was being vetted for the Supreme Court, but it was just so real and funny. And that's what we are bringing to this show is, like it says, red, right, and real. We're real. And I also want to bring the humor side of it, because that's what I really love. And that's what made this show really popular, was that we weren't just sitting here ranting and screaming and raving. We actually had a little bit of fun. And we're going to play this because, here's 2 things that I don't know if they'll ever go away. The man bun,
every player,
and the mask.
unless they're from the same household, has to bring their own tennis.
We're getting the now.
Okay, there we go. 2 things that I don't know if they'll ever go away, but I'm willing to do my part to use a weed whipper to get rid of the man bun. And then, that X-Acto thing that can just snap that mask off people, and just
a weed whipper to get rid of the man bun. Come on. Sometimes a man bun makes sense.
No.
If you got long hair, I mean, I guess you could rock your long hair.
No.
So there's never been a man bun that you've seen, you're like, that's a nice man bun.
No. That's not what real men do. And we got to stop wearing these masks. So we're going to play this. I literally busted my gut out laughing and could not believe that this woman didn't get any further into this. I can't understand how these 2 dudes behind her didn't pull the mask down and be like, okay, I'm done. How can anybody even take this seriously? But we're going to put a little bit of light and humor into what we were actually subjected to and made to believe was real. A Sharpie on your balls.
Unless they're from the same household, has to bring their own tennis balls, so that you don't touch other people's tennis balls with your hands. You can kick their balls, but you can't touch them. I'm gonna blush. Sorry. Of course, if you're playing with someone in your household, you can touch those tennis balls. To avoid confusion between whose balls are whose, you can use a marker, like a Sharpie, to mark out, to put an X or put someone's initials on them. I would just say.
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? Like, yesterday we talked and we said, is this real? Is this a real thing? And you and I both agreed that based off of what we could find, it was real. So it's like the funny thing about this is like to imagine for people just like, I think we have such short-term memories. It's like, oh, remember that time when quite literally health authorities were coming out and saying like, don't go outside without a mask. And then also if you're going to play tennis, make sure that you don't touch other people's tennis balls when you're playing tennis, unless you live in the same household. And then you can touch the same tennis balls. But if you're playing against someone that you don't live with, wear your mask, and then also make sure to put Sharpies on your balls so you don't accidentally touch their balls. And it's like they were being dead serious. Like it's so funny to us, but that's quite literally how mad certain governments across this country went, where they're telling people not to freaking touch a tennis ball if they don't live in your same household. Like that, to me, that's what's so wild about that video. It's funny, but like that's how mad certain parts of our government went back. And I think we forget that.
Well, I was going to play this clip last week when Lisa McDowell Hansen came on, just to set the stage for just how insane and, fear is the strongest emotion that the human has. And so when fear kicked in as strongly as it did, it threw common sense out of so many people's mind. Like they could not catch up to their own common sense to stop themselves from buying into a lot of this. And I said way back when there were going to be people that never gave up the mask, and unfortunately they're still running around. Now I can't address the man bun, but maybe Kamala should wear a Sharpie marked on her forehead so that we can know when it's the real Kamala speaking to us, whether she picks up an accent in a different state so that she can sound like a different ethnic group, or maybe she should put an X on her forehead when she feels like we should know that it's the real Kamala, when she's really ready to answer questions with serious answers. So I know that the CNN, I don't know if you can call it an interview. I think let's call it just a display of how you can get asked questions and just literally not answer them and just run circles around and think that you're coming across as serious as a candidate for president of the United States. Because I literally watched it, AK, and I said to myself, anybody that is trying to make a decision based on policy, which I was at the state fair last Thursday, and I'm not a big fan of the state fair, but I was pleasantly surprised because I had
Why is
fun
that
with,
though? Why aren't you a big fan of the state fair?
maybe it's because the last time I was there, I was a little kid, and I was never one for the, I don't know. And then I went in my 20s and it was always packed, and it just, I don't know. I just never had great thoughts about it because it seemed like you were always just packed wall to wall with people. You could never order food. We had a pleasant day on Thursday. Kim Fox and I really enjoyed it. We got to go to the Never Waltz booth, which was, many people deep, getting excited to spin the Timmy Waltz goofy look to win the Never Waltz little hand sign to run around. But I was polling people, AK, and I could not find anybody that was voting for Harris other than one girl at a soda shop. And her go-to was the 25,000 for first-time homeowners. And then there were two nice little ladies that answered my survey, and they said that they just couldn't vote for a felon. So again, there's no policy. So if these people that are looking for policy and how they're going to actually fix the inflation, the high cost of groceries, help the middle class, and help turn this country around, let's see what the brilliance of Kamala and Timmy brought to CNN. Play the first.
Yeah. So before we kind of cue this up, the idea really is for us, we're going to try and go through, play portions of this. It's a total of like 16 minutes if you play it from beginning to end without any commercials, of this interview that took place. And so what we're going to attempt to do is kind of go through, and again, we are a growing show, but we're going to attempt to go through and we're going to play certain portions. And then we want to be able to have like some commentary about like what we're kind of seeing. But before we get into that, just a couple of points, thinking about the state fair. So when it comes to, really the political leanings of Minnesota, right? There's this tendency that the media portrays Minnesota as like this left of center state because we haven't had a statewide Republican elected in a very, very long time. But I continue to say that it's because we don't have enough people that are average every day that decide that they actually want to get involved, because the margins are relatively slim. when you kind of look at it. It's not like Democrats win statewide by like huge margins. And we always have these stories about how many Republicans did not turn out. And we even say like, these are people that have been identified as Republicans that just didn't turn out to vote in previous elections. And so I say that because at the state fair, the Republican Party of Minnesota had a booth. I was there. I worked there. Shout out to anyone that stopped by to say hi. Like literally like hundreds of people noticed me. A bunch of people asked to take photos. It's always a super humbling experience for me when people recognize me from either TikTok or from the radio or from my Monday morning MNGOP updates. And in that kind of same vein, you know, people would come into the booth, talk to me. They were fired up. And then a lot of people are talking about the Never Walls booth, which is run by Action for Liberty. And so it's like we kind of had two different things going on because we're not connected in any way, shape, or form. They're their own entity. It's just we both don't want Walls to ever win anything ever again in the world of politics. But it is fascinating that I think that that was actually the sentiment for so many people. And when you actually look at the polling data, there was a new poll that was released that showed that from the time that Kamala Harris picked Governor Walz, that Donald Trump has actually made gains in Minnesota. And the craziest part, because I'm a crosstabs guy, is I look to see where Donald Trump was winning with different groups. He's crushing it. He's actually beating Kamala and Walz when it comes to 18 to 34-year-olds, literally. And you want to know where Donald Trump is losing right now? According to this one poll, which could be wrong, he's losing the plus 60 group. So young people are fired up for Donald Trump and JD Vance, and old people are fired up for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, which usually it's the inversion, right? When we talk about Democrat, Republican. So I think that should give people a just like a silver lining that if young people are fired up, eventually the older folks will come on board. Because then I don't think older folks want communism. Maybe they do, but let's
careful talking about the older folks.
Yes.
Thank you, AK.
The
remembering
60,
our conversation.
The 65 plus. You're not old, Bella.
I
You're
am
seasoned. You're seasoned. All right, let's see what we got here.
As he exits quickly.
You have less time to make your case to voters than any candidate in modern American history. The voters are really eager to hear what your plans are. If you are elected, what would you do on day one in the White House?
Well, there are a number of things. I will tell you, first and foremost, one of my highest priorities is to do what we can to support and strengthen the middle class. When I look at the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people, I think that people are ready for a new way forward in a way that generations of Americans have been fueled by hope and by optimism.
So I just want to pause right there. All right. From the time that she asked that question, right, there's been almost a minute that has elapsed. She hasn't said a word that has any substance. Like, what did she asked, like, what are your priorities? And remember, she prefaced this, Dana Bash prefaced this, you have the shortest amount of time of any presidential campaign in all of American history to try and convince the American people why they should vote for you. And like, just like take that in its own context. But that to me is probably the craziest part, where sometimes I feel like is half of the country having an aneurysm? Like, is their brain just not functioning? Like the fact that one, no one ever actually voted to elect her in a democratic institutional way, but that she has so little time, and then when she starts to give an answer, she doesn't even have an answer. Do you think, Bella, that she had just no answer? Is that why she's not answering?
So the Democrat Party really, I mentioned it last week. If she were to win in November, we've literally elected Obamacare, pass it through so that we can know what we're getting. They literally think that they can do Biden 2.3 by keeping her away from everybody and keeping her from the media, keeping her from opening her mouth, because she can't answer anything. When she goes off cue, and if she goes in the wrong direction, she starts babbling about the that kind of circle thing that she goes into. And then when she really doesn't, no, she does not have the answer because she's been in office. She's what has created the problem, and she has no plan on changing any direction other than getting in the office and business as usual. So when you mentioned earlier, and thanks for slowing down on the polling piece, because when we're talking about the gains between the 18 and 34-year-olds, these are the people that I talk to all the time, that I can't find anybody that's in support of Harris. Now, in your early 20s, you are excited about your career, your life, your opportunity in front of you. I had bought 2 homes within my early 20s, and I was able to buy a home for first-time home owner prices. When somebody says to me about the $25,000 grant to first-time homeowners, there's no first-time homes out there out in the market unless they're ready to be demolished. And then then you might as well add that to the price of the home, which adds to the inflation. The increase to the corporate tax rate that she wants to add, I believe it's somewhere in the 20s. She wants to raise up to 28%. Is that correct, AK? Do I have my number?
Yeah,
right?
because President Trump cut it down to try and be competitive with like European nations, and then Biden has gradually been increasing the corporate tax rate, and she wants to basically try and get it back to the levels it was at before Trump came in and cut the corporate tax rate. Yeah.
Which all goes back to raising inflation. All of this goes back. So her I call it happy talk. When she says support the middle class, that's her answer. She wants you to believe that she's just going to support the middle class, sprinkle fairy dust, and something is somehow going to fix it, because she did not give one answer because she doesn't have an answer.
Yeah, so I'm gonna continue to play this. There's a really funny part that I want you to pick up on to see if you hear it. Maybe.
That's just funny looking right there.
I think sadly, in the last decade, we have had in the former president someone who has really been pushing an agenda and an environment that is about diminishing the character and the strength of who we are as Americans, really dividing our nation. And I think people are ready to turn the page on that.
So what would you do day one?
Day one, it's going to be about, one, implementing my
Right. So right there, right? So that entire everything that she said from the first question that Dana Bash asked her was just a word vomit salad. And then when she finally stops talking, Dana Bash is like, so yeah. So the question was, what are you going to do on day one?
So I wrote down what she said: pushing an agenda, diminished character of who we are, and dividing. So in other words, what she is saying is she's blaming Trump
Yeah.
for what has happened.
But again, the question was, what are you going to do on day one?
I understand that, but then all she wants to do is kind of like, I had a conversation earlier today with one of my customers when he was talking about how he really wished that Donald Trump had a better character. And I stopped him because you and I have had this conversation offline. And I said, we really have to thank the media for coming forward and grabbing clips of things that have been taken out of context, to try and push this belief onto us that Trump is this really morally bankrupt, corrupt, perverse individual. And I said, this was the first president that this media literally went into and attacked, while, if we went into the backgrounds and some of the things that, all presidents have their, shall we say, backroom etiquette stories, things that were never brought forth to this level. Excuse me, but where did Kamala get started with Montel Williams and the big senator that first
Willie
gave her-
Brown,
Willie
he
Brown.
was former House of Representatives, or not. So he was a former Speaker of the House of California Assembly, and then he met Kamala when she was basically starting in the prosecutor's office, and then he became mayor of San Francisco. And that's how that story goes. But listen, to your point though, I am a person that has also fell victim to the idea of believing the narrative that Trump is a nasty guy, like his character.
Where did
I
you
know
get
that-
that from?
Well, I mean, right now, and this happened during the state fair, and I kept on trying to like kind of push people to challenge, but most people would say, here's the thing about Trump, like people got to vote for him, and they would say, yeah, I don't like his character, but at the end of the day, what matters is policy. So that is kind of like a conventional wisdom that don't vote for his character, vote for his policy. And then we just kind of accept that that's true. It's just not, though. If you actually look into the body of work of President Donald Trump before he was president, as his character as a human being, he's been known to be a very generous, philanthropic guy to even his employees, to people that help him on the side of the road. Like there's all these, stories, and maybe they're all apocryphal, and maybe they're all just like, PR spun up, but I can't believe that there's that many of them over his long history. Because believe you and me, all of them would have came out. Like if there would have been stories of like, Donald Trump, kicked my dog and he spit on me, or he did something like untoward like that, that's what would happen. But in truth, like he was a guy that was very successful and popular. And right now, if you went and you polled the top 20 famous people in Hollywood, let's say actors, right? The top, most famous actors, and you asked about their personal interactions, there's probably entire gossip columns about things that they've done that have been untoward, but they don't get spun as like a bad guy. And so I say all of this because there's just this prevailing acceptance of a conventional wisdom that Donald Trump has a poor moral character. And I push back against that. And I say, well, like specifically what? Well, I didn't like the way he talked about Rosie O'Donnell, calling her a fat pig. And I'm like, well, if you had been betrayed by someone, I guess the way that you could take it is you can like quote unquote take it with grace, which is that you don't go back after them, or you can say, you know what, that person attacked me, so I'm going to attack them back. And to me, that doesn't mean that you have poor character. So there was a time when I was like, well, yeah, I guess I could maybe understand that. But again, like if someone is very disrespectful to you, do you think that it is poor character to be like, well, if you're going to be disrespectful to me, I'm not going to provide you the same level of courtesy. And that's where I think a lot of this comes down to. But that's again, in a situation if you're being attacked, if you say, okay, well, you have to be a pious.
Uh-oh. What happened?
Here?
What'd you do?
Let's see. That was weird. It felt like we got kicked off the stream.
Are we back on?
I believe so. We are. I'm looking at our live stream, and I know there's a little bit of a lag from what's on the live stream, but let's see here. But yeah, anyways,
Yeah.
Ultimately, when it comes down to it, we set this belief and we accept this narrative that Donald Trump is like his character. He's like a mean and nasty guy. And I just actually don't think that that's true. I think we need to push back against that narrative and say, well, why? Like what specifically? And if let's say that they talk about the Rosie O'Donnell thing, or like Megyn Kelly bleeding from your whatever, say, okay, well, those instances, but like in that situation being adversarial, what would you do different? That's what I like to throw it back there. And most people will be like, I guess I wouldn't do anything different. Like, yeah, you probably would. If someone attacks you, you're not going to sit there and just lay down on the ground. I mean, you're not a monk. You're not a Buddhist monk, right?
Well, when I talk about real humor back in Johnny Carson days, I mean, you were able to really, Archie Bunker would never get on the air nowadays with the way that he spoke. Donald Trump, I really believe. And before I run over myself, in 2016, after that election, I ran around and talked to so many people that said they had never voted before. They finally voted. They had given up on voting, or they just were so disenfranchised. And I will stand my ground, and then we'll go back to this clip again. I believe that Donald Trump really got the support of red-blooded, hardworking, blue-collar people that had checked out when he stood up, and I sent you that clip when he was talking with Clinton on the debate stage, Hillary Hildebeest, as I like to call her, and he talked about locking her up in jail. I do believe that that's when a lot of red-blooded, blue-collar American people that had checked out said, I'm going to get behind that man, because for the first time, finally, someone said what should have been done. All right, let's go ahead to the next clip we're going to play.
My plan for what I call an opportunity economy. I've already laid out a number of proposals in that regard, which include what we're going to do to bring down the cost of everyday goods, what we're going to do to invest in America's small businesses, what we're going to do to invest in families, for example, extending the child tax credit to $6,000 for families for the first year of their child's life, to help them buy a car seat, to help them buy baby clothes, a crib. There's the work that we're going to do that is about investing in the American family around affordable housing, a big issue in our country right now. So there are a number of things on day one.
What about you?
Well, I'm excited about this agenda, too. As I said, the idea of inspiring America to what can be. And I think many of these things that the Vice President's proposing are things that we share in values. And the child tax credit is one we know that reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We did it in Minnesota to have a federal partner in this. Unbelievable, I think, in the impact that we can make.
So again, all of that, and what she only said is a $6,000 basically earned income credit for families, which, by the way, President Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have proposed a $5,000 earned income tax credit. And somehow this first-time home buyer, innocuous, maybe $25,000. So her day one priority on a sit-down canned interview that was recorded between her and Tim Walz, the only thing that they said that they actually would do is a $6,000 earned income credit and potentially a down payment assistance. Like, that doesn't even make sense. Like, all the other things that she said were about ideas. It wasn't like, this is what I will do on day one. And I think that's crazy. Like, to me, it doesn't, if you're trying to be a discerning individual and you're like, I don't know about Trump, I don't know about Kamala, I just want to hear what she has to say because she hasn't actually released policy positions yet. And that day one is that she might do a child tax credit and she might do $25,000 down payment assistance, which, again, I don't necessarily think she could do that on her own. I think, like, you have to, like, I don't think that's an executive action that you can, maybe you can, I don't know, but that's crazy to me.
Are you able to bring up just a couple of minutes of Trump, the downloaded of his speech? It's several weeks ago, but can we show a straight comparison? Can you pull that up? Are you able to share that side of the screen?
I can try. Again, we're in fresh territory here. Which speech would you be wanting me to take a look at?
If you go into the videos and you'll see Trump standing at the podium.
Oh, okay. You got to play it on your end, because on my end, I can't see that.
I don't know if this is going to work. Let's try it.
To every American who's terrified that Crooked Joe's weakness will cause catastrophic global conflict, excuse me, it already is. I make this promise to you as president. I will restore peace through strength, and we will stop World War III. We will not have World War III. And I know all the players. I know them all. Because it was Joe Biden with his weakness and what he did with Iran and others that caused the attack on Israel. That's very simple. They would have never attacked. They would have never attacked Israel. Never. Russia would have never attacked Ukraine. You wouldn't have inflation. You wouldn't have any inflation right now. It was energy that went up like skyrocketed. He stopped it. Just no more. Let's have everything. Thank you. Unlike Joe Biden, I will stand with our friend and ally, the state of Israel, 100%. We'll stand with them 100%. And unlike Crooked Joe, I will fully support Israel's mission of ensuring that the terrorist group Hamas is defeated, dismantled, and permanently destroyed. They have to destroy them. And they have to be careful in their type of attack. Going in is a lot of risks to that with the mines that are put all over the place in the tunnels probably. You know, bad things can happen. There's other ways of doing it also, but they know what they're doing and they have to do it right. But they have to be tough and they have to win. They have no choice. They have to win. We have to bring our country back. It's not an easy thing to do. Would you believe what's happened to the USA in the last 3 years? But I will immediately reinstate all sanctions on the murderous Iranian regime. You have to do that till we have a deal. If you will not enforce sanctions against Iran, then you do not stand with Israel. It's that simple. It's all about.
Okay. Wow. I figured out how to turn it off.
Great job. Hey, that actually wasn't so bad. I was like, I wonder how long Bella's gonna let this thing roll for.
My point is, do you want a leader? Do you want somebody that just sits there and undermines our intellect, undermines what we know and want for this country? Do we want somebody that literally came out and said that 18 and 20-year-olds are stupid? That's why they're in dormitories, because they can't, obviously she didn't say this, but in so many words, they can't think for themselves. She thinks we're all stupid. That's why she manages to come on here. The whole thing, it's all orchestrated all together. They're all in it together. We've been hearing this for years, but now they've perfected the fact that they think that they can literally insert her without the process. They can keep her hidden. And then when she goes on, she doesn't have to answer a goddamn question with any policy, any stand. You look at where she is right now with Hamas and Bibi, the loss of life, and the support of Hamas and Palestine, and then to go on CNN and talk to us as if we are just complete idiots. I said to you, AK, and I believe with this audience, this is not helping her. That is my belief.
Yeah. So I think we'll play a couple more parts, because what I probably find most interesting in this sit down is that your main takeaway is that a whole lot of nothing got said, right? Like that's
Right.
really the takeaway. And what I find fascinating is kind of, again, the way that we kind of arrive at our conclusions, that from your perspective, I think you laid out beautifully that you think that this doesn't actually, like, that it actually hurts her. And my perspective is that I agree that it doesn't help her, but I also don't think that it hurts her. I think it actually, this is kind of bigger picture, but all of the corporate press, the stories that they were writing was, this interview was boring, and that's exactly what Kamala needed. So just imagine that for a moment. This is
Okay, but let me interject this though.
Yeah.
Why? Okay, for years and years and years, the disenfranchisation of voting. So let me go back in history a little bit. One of the reasons that I do believe that Barack became so popular and what happened was people didn't want the Clintons and the Bushes anymore. Barack was unknown. He was beautiful. He was eloquent. He could command an amazing speech. You couldn't really dissect what the hell he was actually going to do, because it was all hope and change and rainbows and butterflies, and he was going to bring the biggest change to America ever. I know, because I was in the trenches in the belly of the beast of Minneapolis, Minnesota, on my way out to Williston, North Dakota. I couldn't get even some of the most astute conservatives to understand what he was going to do. Okay? Why did Donald Trump gain so much popularity? Because he spoke to us like us. He spoke to us like no other candidate had ever spoken. In that first debate back in 16. Do you remember how he literally annihilated all of his competition with all the little nicknames, and they were so perfectly picked out? Low energy Jeb, little Marco Rubio. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And these were statues of the Republican Party that this man came out and just obliterated. He did
Yeah,
the
I
same
do
thing.
remember. I do remember that he figuratively obliterated them, because if he would have literally obliterated them, there would have been blood and guts all over that stage.
But I mean,
I know
look
what you
at what
mean,
he
though. I know.
was able to do. And then when he came up against Hillary, I mean, like I said, when he mentioned locking her up in jail and all the one-liners, nobody had ever in all of the presidential races actually spoke the way that you and I talk while sitting and having a Diet Coke or a beer and calling them out for what they are. Kamala Harris is the epitome of the establishment, the self-bloviated, self-important, high on the throne. She is above all, and this will hurt her because people are sick and tired of this attitude. The polls are starting to turn around, and I believe, yes, we know that the media is all in on this together, but at the end of the day, it's the independents. Trump's got the young. I believe that the older, the more seasoned. The thing is it's going to come down to, it comes down to the economy. We're all facing the effects of grocery prices, restaurant prices. Can we take vacations? Can we buy homes? What are we excited about? Where's our future? And when you could look at Barack Hussein Obama, at least he eloquently could explain and put on a speech that you had belief in he was going to deliver on what he was bringing forth. He talked about policy. She talks about nothing, and it continues to get worse as we get into some of the answers that Tim has. So play the
Yeah,
next.
yeah. I'm gonna try and find this immigration point, which I think is super fascinating. So let's see. I think it's the next point. Let's find out.
You talked about, you call it the opportunity economy. You are well aware that right now many Americans are struggling. There's a crisis of affordability. One of your campaign themes is we're not going back. But I wonder what you say to voters who do want to go back when it comes to the economy specifically, because their groceries were less expensive, housing was more affordable when Donald Trump was president.
Well, let's start with the fact that when Joe Biden and I came in office, during the height of a pandemic, we saw over 10 million jobs were lost. People, I mean, literally, we were all tracking the numbers. Hundreds of people a day were dying because of COVID. The economy had crashed. In large part, all of that because of mismanagement by Donald Trump of that crisis. When we came in, our highest priority was to do what we could to rescue America. And today, we know that we have inflation at under 3%. A lot of our policies have led to the reality that America recovered faster than any wealthy nation around the world. But you are right. Prices, in particular for groceries, are still too high. The American.
So a couple of things. So the question was,
Again,
you said you're not going to go back, but yet there's a lot of Americans based off of a lot, not just polling, but like, I guess technically it's polling, but like customer surveys and questionnaires of like, do you feel that you're struggling economically? And like every single time that question is asked, people overwhelmingly say things were better under Trump for my family, right? That's what everyone says. And it's been consistent for the last 2.5 years. And so her answer is like nothing. It's like she's talking about the pandemic and blah. She's like doing this, roundabout where she doesn't take accountability. And the truth is, she is in there right now. And Bidenomics clearly doesn't work. She has continued to stand by Bidenomics because if she does distance herself from it, then she basically like would have to come up with a new economic strategy, which she's clearly not going to do. So it's just so wild to me. Also, too, just real quick, Bella, as I'm watching the playback, even though the audio is coming through clear, I think the video is lagging. So those of you that are watching, if you're like, I can hear the audio great from the interview that I'm playing, but like the video's choppy. My bad. We're trying to still figure that out, but I think the audio is coming through just normal. It's just the video looks choppy. But go ahead, Bella.
So again, it goes back to blaming Trump, who's been out of office 3.5 years. Inflation was right around 1% when they went into office, and they immediately shut down the pipeline. We went from energy independence to buying foreign oil. Gas went up just about immediately after the election. And I'm a former oil field worker. The minute that crude starts going up, transportation costs start going up. In Junction, it turns around, the cost of everything goes up. That's why food prices are so high. So when she wants to try and blame the food suppliers, when she wants to turn around and do price fixing, I mean, these are all things that will turn the inflation even higher and worse, because price fixing didn't work. I believe that was tried back when Carter was in office, correct, AK?
Nixon. Yep.
Sorry about that.
No, yeah. Nixon was he was in the kind of the height of it, and he tried throwing everything against the wall, and he made some very poor economic decisions that led to fuel shortages and other shortages all across the supply chain, because you can't just do price controls. And obviously Maduro, and before Maduro, you had Hugo Chavez down in Venezuela that did these price controls, and it completely destroyed and decimated one of the, like, they are a very oil rich country, and they are absolutely like starving and devastated. Even to this day, Maduro has been sending all these Venezuelans up to the United States. So crime is down in Venezuela, and all of the bad folks are here in the United States. We've seen these stories in Aurora, Colorado, of Venezuelan gangs going in, and some of it might be, a little bit of embellishment, and it's hard to really pin down what's happening because there's neighbors that are talking to local media, and then the police are coming out saying one thing, and then the mayor's office saying another thing. It's all a mess, but there's clearly a problem with Venezuelan migrants, I should say Venezuelan criminal aliens that are literal gang members and criminals from Venezuela that are being pushed into the United States. And then in Chicago, there's these stories that are coming out in the last 24 hours that, again, you have these gangs of Venezuelan criminal aliens that are causing problems. But that, again, goes back to price fixing, price controls. That is a communist tool to try and control the economy. It never works. But to the point here is that Kamala, when she talks about what she wants to do economically, I find it interesting. I wanted to try and find this one part. And I want to get your opinion on what you think. I have a good idea of what you think, but I want to see if I can find this. I'm not even going to queue it up. I just want to see if I can find it and then play it here and just get your thoughts. Let's try about
Hundreds of dollars up to thousands of dollars a month for her insulin. She's not doing that
So
any
you
longer.
maintain Bidenomics is a success.
I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America, what we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work.
So I'm almost to where I wanted to be, but this I think is interesting. Tell me, of those three things that she mentioned, aren't those all things that Trump literally is saying he's going to do that he actually did? The idea that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have brought manufacturing back to the United States is absurd. The idea that they're helping bring down the cost of prescription drugs and that they're reducing poverty, all of that is absurd. Those are all things that happened during Trump. And because the economy was halted, a lot of that stuff happened. But it's just absurd. If you drop someone in just to watch this interview, Kamala Harris might come off as a moderate right of center person, or if someone just hasn't been paying attention. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on her framing things that way of Bidenomics, that's what they've been able to accomplish.
Well, one of the things that I love bringing to our show is real conversations. Just the other day, I got called. So I worked for a temporary staffing company for 10 years. I started in early 2001. After 9/11, manufacturing went flat in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and throughout much of the country. And it didn't recover for a couple of years. It's part of when I started really listening to Dennis Miller used to be on the air back then. I started listening to Glenn Beck. I hadn't started the podcast, but I started really paying attention because I was in every manufacturing floor here in Minneapolis from 2001 to 2009. I was already watching the high volumes of illegals that were infiltrating through other agencies working alongside the legal immigrants. I have a purpose to this story because I got called the other day by somebody from another staffing company, and he was asking if he was explaining he didn't want to interview me, but he knew of me and my experience and wanted to keep in touch in case we could do some networking together. And I said to him, I'm trying to understand because I keep hearing this undercurrent from everybody in manufacturing that they don't want me to follow up with them until after the election. And I said, I get the sense that we're back where we were back in 2009 and 2010. That was after the massive real estate collapse. Manufacturing had gone pretty much silent. There was so little hope for me as a sales rep. That's what pushed me out to Williston, North Dakota. It was simply a job. It wasn't that I literally wanted to run around being the only female in all of Williston, North Dakota. And then when I said we have to get past the election, he said, now that you've gone there, I want to point something out. The same individual that crushed Minnesota during COVID is now going to try and be VP and will crush the rest of the U.S. the way that he did in Minnesota. When you look at Minnesota's track record, we are not leading in economics or education. You have some stats from the educational results. I mean, Minnesota is going completely the wrong direction. So when she makes her comments about, yeah, they're going to do this and that, I mean, they always go back to protecting the elderly and children, and then she's going to bring manufacturing back. They have been slashing manufacturing in Minnesota and the U.S. for a very long time over taxation, regulation. And if they bring and raise that corporate tax, it's just going to diminish it even more. Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah. So I think you touch on a couple of good points, and sometimes it's hard to kind of present this information in a way that makes sense. So for those of you watching that are interested, I made a video talking about how Tim Walz lies all the time. And then in that video, I also started to break down some of the educational stats that have 100%, like you can't disprove them. It's data that's collected by Minnesota Department of Education that's published in an annual report. And Center of the American Experiment, they've done a great job breaking down these numbers. But you can go and look at the data yourself. And so I did. I literally had 10 different reports pulled up, basically going back a total of 6 years to see what were certain educational attainment rates back when Walz became governor versus right now. And they're down all across the board. And so one of the things that's a shining example is that Governor Tim Walz always portrays himself, right? I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, I care about kids. During his governorship, Minnesota, in regards to proficiency and graduation rates, but proficiency more specifically for all students in Minnesota, has continually lowered to the point that the state of Mississippi now has more proficient children in their school system that can read, write, and do science. Read, write, do math and science. And that's how bad things are getting in Minnesota. Like, it used to be a joke, right? Like, people, no disrespect to people from Mississippi, but would be like, yeah, Mississippi country bumpkins, right? And Minnesota is like the shining pinnacle of education. And here it turns out that we are actually losing in certain proficiencies to the state of Mississippi. Again, this is under Governor Tim Walz, who's had Democrat control for a majority of the time that he's been in office. There was a couple of years where Republicans had control of the House and the Senate. We had like the split whole thing here, right? And then again, it's been mostly Democrat control of everything else. And this is just the truth. These policies that Tim Walz will push on the rest of the nation will be devastating to the rest of the nation. They'll try and spin it off and say it's this, that, and the other thing. And here's the other thing that should really get you going. If you're a person watching, or let's say that you're watching and you have a friend or a family member that always talks about, racism in the system and all that stuff. Now, personally, I don't think that having a disparity in a system is a proof that racism is like baked into that system. I actually reject that notion. There's a whole bunch of other factors. But let's say that you are one of these people, one of these Democrats that believes that wherever there's a disparity between races, that means that the system is racist. Minnesota is number one when it comes to the educational disparity between white and black students when it comes to proficiency for reading, science, and math. The largest gaps exist of all 50 states in Minnesota between white students' proficiency and black students' proficiency. Again, under Democrat control in the state. And it just means that the system is not working. Even if you're a person that's a Democrat and that's your metric, well, then you're just proving that Tim Walz, who wants to fight racism, right, is making the system more racist. Now, again, I reject that notion that it's actually a racist issue. I think it's a misallocation and in overreach. I think that parents know what's best for their children. So if you unleash freedom of choice for parents to send their children to take their taxpayer dollars and be able to send their children, have an open voucher system, I think that that's actually how you succeed. But it's just crazy. And I just wanted to throw that out there. Now, I want to move on this interview. They're going to talk about fracking here in just a moment. So I might pause it and then skip forward because I'm curious about your thoughts about this, Bella.
There's more to do, but that's good work.
I want to get some clarity on where you stand on some key policy issues. Energy is a big one. When you were in Congress, you supported the Green New Deal. And in 2019, you said, quote, "There is no question I'm in favor of banning fracking." Fracking, as you know, is a pretty big issue, particularly in your must-win state of Pennsylvania.
Sure.
Do you still want to ban fracking?
No, and I made that clear on the debate stage in 2020, that I would not ban fracking. As vice president, I did not ban fracking. As president, I will not ban fracking.
In 2019, I believe, in a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
What are your thoughts on that, Bella?
So, do you have anywhere, or can you Google it or fact check it? Why was she opposed to fracking? What was it about? And many people probably don't even know what fracking is. It's part of the drilling process. It's what allowed Williston, North Dakota to have the boom that it did, because fracturing was what allowed us. Drilling is much more deeper and complex in the state of North Dakota, and fracking is the process of going into the hole that is drilled to break up the ground to extract the oil out of the ground. Now, back in the day, during the boom, many people would want you to believe that fracking caused earthquakes. Fracking caused flames to come out of waters and faucets. Fracking was dangerous to the environment. Longtime resident in North Dakota, I was the healthiest I'd ever been when I lived out there. If you travel out there now, you're actually from North Dakota. You cannot see where the 200 and some drilling rigs were. You can see where the pumping stations are. But the whole fracturing process is actually very environmentally safe. So what was it that she, other than just saying I'm against drilling and oil, I don't believe, unless you have something where she actually says why she's against fracking.
Yeah, so I can tell you, and I think you did a great job. So basically, think about it. The best way, based off of technology, to be able to get oil out of the ground and other heavier minerals out of the ground is to be able to drill basically very, very deep, and you drill vertically. Well, our technology was advanced that we're able to actually do some basically not horizontal, but diagonal drilling, and so that allowed us to actually access, instead of going straight down, different pockets of shale oil that we were able to then refine because of our technology. So most, like if you want to say traditional drilling, goes very, very deep into a deep reserve, but our technology is advanced that we can actually extract using this basically water to break up the shale. And then we pump a bunch of additional water and other chemical mixtures
And
that
sand.
actually into the sand that actually helps pull out the oil and separate it from basically the shale. And so this was like a whole new untapped level of actual resource that we could get access to for very cheap, because that's the key. We had the technology, it just wasn't cheap enough to be able to make it profitable, to actually take the expenses of finding and everything like that. The reason why these environmentalists initially were against fracking is because it was a waste of water. That's what they claimed. And then there's another byproduct that we get when we do fracking, and we get access to liquid natural gas. Because again, of the way that the process works,
Correct.
and everything, and what gets moved up through the earth, basically through the soil, we were able to get access to natural gas. And so that's the other product of fracking, is that we get access not just to the oil, to the shale oil, but also to the liquid natural gas. Well, if you don't know, oil is considered a carbon. Natural gas technically is a renewable energy source, but because of what it takes to go into that process, these environmental leftists, which, let's be clear, they're not for saving the environment, they're for controlling people. Because if environmental leftists truly cared about the environment, they'd all be 100% on board with nuclear energy. But they're not, because they don't actually care about human progress. They're anti-human. They want to go back to like a Stone Age type of scenario so they can control people. But anyways, that's a different story for another
And
show.
let me just inject one
Yep.
quick thing,
Yep.
because I did have another round of work out in the oil field, and one of the things that I learned, because they are not allowed to burn off the natural gas anymore because it is capped, it is actually added to the expense of the minimal amount of drilling process out in North Dakota, because that natural gas now has to be treated within the oil itself with chemicals, which that was my former job, which was selling chemicals on the production end of drilling. But we're getting a little bit off course, but we're giving a little bit of education about the true the true cleanliness of drilling in the US versus foreign countries. But so she basically is trying to say, I stand my ground. I'm not against it now. Believe me, because I think you're an idiot, and I don't think you'll go back and question why I can just say today.
Yeah. What she's really saying is, I want to win Pennsylvania, and I know that if I come out against fracking, I will lose Pennsylvania. So now I'm going to lie and pretend that I've always been against banning fracking, and pretend like I didn't in 2019 say that I wanted to ban fracking, because I was trying to signal to the environmental leftists that to this day still want fracking banned, because these folks are against any type of carbon. Like, understand that, like, there's still this entire thing, right, with the Green New Deal and the Paris Climate Accords about capping carbon emissions. Like, that is still a thing that these environmental leftists are still trying to glom onto. And so what this also signals is that Kamala feels, I guess, reassured enough with her environmental leftist wackos that they're still going to be on board with her, that she's deciding to say that she's not going to ban fracking. So I found that exchange so fascinating, that someone that literally came out and said that she was she was in favor of banning fracking is now saying, I was never against it. And then the other thing, she's like, okay, well, in 2019 I might have been against it, but it's 2024. It's like,
And
Uh,
look at Tim's expression right there.
yeah, that's a good one. That's a good screen grab right
But
there.
he's looked like that during this entire interview. I don't know if he's
Yeah. So let's also just kind of point this out. He's made one statement, and this is what, about probably 7-ish minutes into this interview. Like, what is he there for? Is he like people are saying like emotional support dog? But like, what is he there for? He also makes her look really small. Like, look how big he looks compared to her. Like, she's like this little small, timid. Like, just look at the height differential.
honestly,
between
I think he was brought along for damage control in case she went off the rails with her word salad. If she just started giggling and couldn't be brought back on course. I mean, I think he literally was put there for damage control. But honestly, he brought damage to the interview. So let's play. I don't know what's on your next clip because
Yeah.
eventually
So
he gets asked about his service in combat.
yeah. Let's see if we can find it about right here. Because I can kind of like, again, this is our fluid, awesome technology here. Again, we're working on it. We'll see what we can do. See if I can find that clip where she asks him about that. Maybe here.
Which, by the way, the brother of Tim Walz is gaining a little bit more airtime in the media. So it'll be interesting to hear because he has said he is not someone that he would stand by to be the leader and vice president of this country.
Yep. Let's see what we got here.
That you saw that you said, oh, okay, I get it now.
What I have seen is that we can grow and we can increase a thriving clean energy economy without banning fracking.
Okay. As vice president, you were tasked with addressing the root causes of migration.
Was asked to do by the president has actually resulted in a number of benefits, including historic investments by American businesses in that region. The number of immigrants coming from that region has actually reduced since we began that work. But I will say this, that Joe Biden and I and our administration worked with members of the United States Congress on an immigration issue that is very significant to the American people and to our security, which
Here
is
we
the
go.
border.
She's about to blame Trump.
And through bipartisan work, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, a bill was crafted, which we supported, which I support. And Donald Trump got word of this bill that would have contributed to securing our border. And because he believes that it would not have helped him politically, he told his folks in Congress, don't put it forward. He killed the bill. A border security bill that would have put 1,500 more agents on the border. And let me tell you something, the Border Patrol endorsed the bill. And I'm sure in large part because they knew they were working around the clock.
Yeah. So couple of things. One, anyone that's actually read that bill, and I've made TikTok videos on this. It's also on Facebook, Instagram. Go and find my page. TikTok's easier because you can put like labels on it so you can see whatever. And it was not a border bill. It was a fund the Ukraine war and also give money to Israel as well bill. That's what that bill did. And then in regards to like the total value of that package, that the dollar amount, less than 15% would have gone towards anything having to do with the United States border. And it also set these ridiculous caps at 5,000 border crossings per day until they could trigger shutting down the quote unquote official bridges. And the way that they sold this, that they're still pushing it, that Donald Trump shut down their quote unquote border bill is absurdly false. Like, you don't even you can just go look at the bill, just Google border bill and then put Ukraine funding, and legitimately more than half of the money in that border bill goes to Ukraine. So how can you call something a border bill when more than half of the funds allocated in that bill literally go to a foreign country? It makes no sense, does it? And that's because they're lying to you. The bill was never meant to do anything other than fund their further excursions of their globalist warmongering, I love the state of Israel. I've went to Israel. I was a member of AIPAC, but I also don't think I think that there's better ways that we can help Israel. I'm not even concerned that much that bill in and of itself didn't have as much funding, but it definitely was a Ukraine funding bill, and it's just absurd that she would continue to push this lie. It's just false. So don't believe any of it. Go look at it yourself and use your own discernment.
I'm going to stand my ground. She is the epitome of the self-imported, bloviating, lying. Sorry, I can say this because it's a podcast. Jackass. Okay. And underestimating the intellect of this country. And here's what I so love about what I do when I go to McDonald's or Subway or Holiday gas station. These youth, the reason he's captured the youth, because we have a lot of smart youth people and they do a lot of research.
All
And
you young kids, they're so smart.
if they research a lot of these things that she's saying, they're going to see and realize this is the same crap, garbage people that turned people off from voting, turned people away from getting involved in politics, and bought into the disenfranchisement of politicians. So I think that I want to remind everybody in 2016, Donald Trump had less than 1% of a chance of winning. It was a given that Hillary was going to get in. Hillary was more likable than Kamala. Kamala's polling numbers have turned, I think, in big part because of the relief from the Democrats that it's just not Joe Biden.
True.
Okay. There's also the honeymoon phase. And then there's also the piece of the polling numbers that are being skewed. So I want people to really pay attention to what she is not saying, how she is presenting herself, and then who she picked as her running mate.
Yeah.
One
So
of the most let me just finish real quick.
Yeah.
One of the strongest things that I loved about Trump in this campaign was that he kept saying, in the event that I cannot be president, he wants to make sure whoever takes his position can lead this country. You've got Tim Walz, epic failure of the state of Minnesota, the most tyrannical, Marxist, far left, draconian measures brought upon this state that caused more and more unnecessary deaths from COVID into the nursing homes, and then lie after lie after lie. People, the true integrity, grit, and leadership that a leader will bring will be shown at a time of trouble. And this state was in a lot of trouble, and we saw how Timmy mishandled it and the aftermath. And now she picked him as VP, and we'll see some of the answers that he adds to. Go ahead, AK.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and find it, but it's possible. So I took both of these videos from YouTube, CNN for the interview. So we're going to try and find the part where, Tim Walz gets asked some questions, but I was trying to like skim through and I couldn't find it. But again, we're trying to figure this out our little technology wise, and
no worries.
We'll see if we can find it. But yeah, I just think it's important for people to just like truly understand that, like, your takeaway should be when you watch an interview like this, just don't believe what anyone says. I always say that anyways, like, go and look at what they're talking about. Go and see if you can back it up. That's the great thing about President Trump is all the stuff that he talks about. If you literally just go to his website, it's on there. Like literally none of the things that Kamala is talking about are on her website. Like it's that low brow to just understand that one is clearly lying to you. The other one is telling you what they continually say. If you went and you watched the last 10 Trump rallies, he talks about the same issues over and over again because he wants people to know what it is that he wants to do. And then he backs it up by actually releasing, here's what our policy goals are, by having a platform. All of these things, none of which Kamala Harris and Tim Walz do. So let's see where we're at on this. Let's see if we can find where Tim Walz is asked about.
Did anybody go to neverwaltz.com?
It got redirected. They bought it out and they sent it to Kamala Harris's website.
Yeah, what does that say? And the first words on when you click on neverwaltz.com says Trump is a convicted felon, and then it goes right to her campaign page.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I will say Action for Liberty, y'all dropped the ball on that one. You
Yeah, I was
probably
wondering how that happened.
Yeah, you probably should have bought up that domain right off the jump. So they got you on that one. But I still think it was phenomenal. All the people that were carrying around those fans during the state fair, man, there were so many. Like I'm sure
That speaks to what you shined some positivity when you told me that Minnesota is in play, which I believe it. Now, have you found that clip of our fearless, wonderful leader?
Yeah, we'll see what this part is. Let's see here.
Is going to be your policy moving forward?
Dana, I think the most important.
No, that's not
No,
it.
well, go ahead, because she's about to say the most important policies that
We did that with the Inflation Reduction Act. We have set goals for the United States of America and by extension the globe around when we should meet certain standards for reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, as an example. That value has not changed. My value around what we need to do to secure our border, that value has not changed. I spent 2 terms as the Attorney General of California prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, violations of American laws regarding the passage,
is that fact checked right up with her working at McDonald's?
Yeah, she's so full of crap. Because the question was, have your values changed? Because remember, she stood on that stage in 2019/2020, and the question was asked, would you decriminalize border crossings and move it from being a criminal violation to a civil? She raised her hand and she said that she wanted to decriminalize, and now she's saying, no, we're going to enforce the law. And so, Dana Bash
Pelosi isn't going to let her get away with that. Pelosi was on some late show.
Saying
Jimmy Kimmel,
amnesty.
and she says she wants to decriminalize it. So sorry there, Kamala, but Pelosi still is your mama. So I don't think she's going to let you get away with that one either.
Of guns, drugs, and human beings across our border. My values have not changed. So that is the reality of it. In 4 years of being vice president, I'll tell you, one of the aspects to your point is traveling the country extensively. I mean, I'm here in Georgia. I think somebody told me 17 times since I've been vice president in Georgia alone. I believe it is important to build consensus. And it is important to find a common place of understanding of where we can actually solve problems.
On that note, you had a lot of Republican speakers at the convention. Will you appoint a Republican to your cabinet?
Yes, I would.
Oh, sure.
Anyone
Yes,
in
I
mind?
would. No one in particular in mind. We got 68 days to go with
I'm
this
just saying
election,
it
so I'm
because
not
you
putting the
asked
cart
me. I'm
before
gonna-
the horse.
you have-
But I would. I think it's really.
The only Republican she's going to appoint to anything would be someone like
Mitt
Liz
Romney.
Cheney, Mitt Romney, or Adam Kinzinger.
Yeah.
Like that's basically going to be it. Yeah. So I don't think in these clips that I
Collins.
have, I don't think Tim Walz speaks in any of them. I think it's just her the whole time. Other than
important.
that one bit.
I have spent my career inviting.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought this was the full interview, but apparently not, because I know that Tim Walz
If
did
you
have a
become
part.
commander-in-chief. President Biden has tried unsuccessfully to end the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. He's been doing it for months and months.
Yeah, I don't think he's in this clip. And plus, we're getting ready to that time where got to wrap up because I got to go drive tonight for my job.
Well, let's just give a. So you can. I want to. So Tim gets asked if he misspoke about him carrying a weapon and in combat, and Tim basically says he goes off about talking about children in schools and violence, and when Dane tries to bring it back to him, he says, well, my record speaks for my record, and my wife says that I have poor grammar.
Yeah. So, yeah, the lead up was He deflected as he masterfully does every time. Tim Walz is a master of deception. I will give it to him that the one thing that he is amazing at doing is lying in creative ways to confuse and obscure what the actual truth is. And he did that perfectly in this this interview, if you want to call it that. Sure, the way that I explain it, Dana Bash did a good job at asking the question, letting them respond, and then if they didn't answer, asking it one more time or pushing back, but then she stopped. So it was like one push instead of continuing to push like a journalist should and say, you didn't answer the question, or really, it was your grammar. So when the question was asked about him saying that he carried a weapon of war or kind of alluding that he was deployed in a combat zone, he went on to say, when I made those comments, it was because we were talking about gun violence because we don't want children to die. And my wife, who's a teacher, will say one of the things is that I need to work on my grammar. And that's literally what his answer was, is that he's saying, well, I misspoke and maybe I didn't grammatically say it correctly. There's nothing wrong with saying, like, there's nothing grammatically wrong with saying I carried a weapon of war in war. That's not grammatically incorrect. That's just a 100% lie. And then when it comes to the rank that he continues to claim that he had, again, this is what Tim Walz does. He's deceitful. And I made a video about this where it was true that he did attain the rank of command sergeant major, and then he retired. And because he retired, he had that rank pulled from him because he did not complete the requirements. So he can technically say, well, yeah, that'd be like saying that you won the gold medal and you were doping, and then they pulled it back from you. And then for the rest of your life, you're like, yeah, I won the gold medal. And they're like, yeah, but remember when they like stripped you of your medal because you were found to be doping? So he's technically being literal and saying, yeah, I was given this rank. I achieved this rank and then I retired, but he literally didn't get to keep it. You know what I'm saying? That's what he's doing. Or like, let's say that you won the Super Bowl, right? And then they found out that your team cheated, and so then they pulled it back from you. You can't be like, well, I won the Super Bowl. It's like, well, yeah, you won the Super Bowl, but then you were disqualified after the fact. So that means that you didn't win the Super Bowl. So he's not a command sergeant major. He doesn't have the rank anymore. They pulled it from him. But that's what Tim Walz does. He's a liar. He's really good at it. And unfortunately, I should say fortunately, seems like a lot of Minnesotans are coming to that realization because I think of so many great people out there that are pushing out stories, content. Dustin Grange, I know, shout out to him. He's been fantastic over on X pushing out this information. There's so many other people. Alpha News has been doing a great job at pushing it out and just getting truth out there about how much of a duplicitous liar Tim Walz is, because that's what he is.
I've had so many great conversations on my travels today, and everybody, I can say this, I'm not opening anybody's eyes about who Tim Walz is because it's out there, and we're doing our jobs here in Minnesota, exposing the truth of who this man is that unfortunately has been in charge of Minnesota and so many of the things and the destruction of Minnesota. But I have hope and I have belief that God still has his hand in this country, and that the good people of this country, the patriots that we are banding together, and we are fighting, and we are aware, and we are ready to fight, baby, fight, because that's what we got to do, because this is the most important election in November. I don't know if the allergies are really bad if I'm sniffling into the microphone. I am a little bit, but we don't, I'm going to close out by saying this. I remember hearing so many other people saying back in, 2012, all these elections that were like the most important election of our lifetime. Like the world was going to end and it was going to collapse, and we were never going to come back from whatever was going to happen in the next election. The problem is that the Democrat Party is not the Democrat Party from Obama. It's not the Democrat Party from when Hillary was running. It's not the Democrat Party when Bill was in. The Democrat Party has gone so far left that they are unrecognizable. And they have also crafted now a new way of campaigning. You can literally insert, hide, lie, and believe that you can basically put your candidate in. And if we don't get it right this time, I don't see the direction of where we can turn this country around in order to be able to have the ability to turn the economy in the country around, because the perversion of the left, which theoretically by numbers, they have more votes in this country by numbers, sheer numbers. But the path of this party, if we all remember when Biden was running, the whole reason they pulled Biden out was they flat out knew that they were going to lose. There is a perversion of the numbers, and then there's also the relief that it's not Biden. But that's why we are on a fast track of getting the word out, not only who Walz is, who Kamala is. And I got to believe that enough people are going to start seeing through all of this happy talk of just words without substance behind it, so that people understand just how dangerous a ticket this is. AK, go ahead.
Yep, I agree. I co-sign on everything that you just said, Bella. You know, people are not stupid. I know that there's this tendency, and it's actually one of my biggest pet peeves when someone's like, oh, the people are dumb, the people are sheep. I know that people have a tendency to want to fit in, and people can be manipulated in all these different things. But I genuinely believe that people have, every individual, because God created us, has the capacity for good and the capacity for evil. There are people that choose to live in ignorance. There are people that choose to seek knowledge and to inform themselves. So when people say like people are dumb, that's not true. There's a lot of people that choose to be dumb. There's a lot of people that choose to live in ignorance. And so what I'm always doing is encouraging people that you should not want to live in ignorance. You should try and find the truth, seek the truth. God gives us these amazing brains that can do so much. And so I think that when people actually find out that the world that's been presented to them, the narratives that are being sold to them, that are being forced on them, just aren't true, that's when they wake up and say, enough is enough. So that's what my hope is. I want to give people some action items. Number one, as much as we talk about these things, if you don't actually go out and put in the effort to get President Donald Trump elected along with other Republicans, then I'll be honest, it doesn't really matter. You can have 50,000 yard signs and talk about how much you love Donald Trump, but if you don't actually go out and vote, and you don't get other people to go out and vote and literally like say, go vote, man, it doesn't matter. So go to TrumpForce47.com. That's the website that I encourage everyone to go to get signed up so you can actually help turn Minnesota red. Also go to protectthevote.com so you can actually help on election day to ensure that we have election integrity. There's a lot of news that's coming out. You can follow me on my social media. I'm usually everywhere at either real AK Kamara or at AK Kamara. I'm pushing out content on a regular basis so you can stay informed. I did want to do one shout out and one plug. On Friday, Scott Pressler, the guy that has been amazing at chasing down ballots and getting people registered to vote in Pennsylvania, he is going to be in Minnesota helping do a training. He's going to be at a couple of different locations, but the one specifically I want to talk about is going to be in Carver County. If you go to any of my social media profiles, you're going to see a link for my link tree. It's linktr.ee/AK Kamara. The number one link at the top is how you can get registered. It's like $30. And again, there's a couple of other sessions of how do you actually go out there, get people registered to vote, and chase down ballots. So that's my plea. Take everything that Bella and I talk about. It's great to be informed, but turn it into action. Because if we don't have action, we lose. And as President Donald Trump said, we have to make this thing too big to rig. And if we do those things, we will make it too big to rig. Thank you so much, Bella. I'll let you close her out and get out of here so I can get to work.
Thank you, AK. Yeah, I'm done with work. I've worked all day, but my work isn't done, and it's not done this evening. I'm gonna get done with the show, and I'm gonna promote it on many pages. I really, my action item, and you might laugh at it, but one of the most refreshing things you can do is as you're driving through whatever drive-through you go to, whatever gas station you go to, wherever you're. I got a Subway sandwich today for lunch, and I was down in Waconia, Minnesota, and a young man that was beautifully articulately putting I have the same sandwich all the time, turkey, ham, all the veggies. And I said, I'm taking a survey. I do a political podcast. Are you voting in November? And he said, no, ma'am, I can't vote. I said, what do you mean you can't vote? He said, I wasn't a very good person when I was younger. And I said, got it. I said, if you could vote, who would you vote for, Trump or Kamala? And he said, Donald Trump all day long. I get that resounding answer all day long from the young and from all walks. And I have the bumper sticker, the Trump train on the back of my car. I get thumbs up all day long as I'm driving around. My action item is try that out. Tell them you're taking a poll for Red, Right, and Real. Heck, we don't care. Share that information here. Let us know. Do we have any comments, by the way, that we need to share real quick?
Yeah, I literally have to go. I will be late, and
we
I
will
need
wrap
to
it
make
up because
money.
he's got to get
Yeah.
to work. We
Yeah,
ran
like I
long
literally,
tonight.
I'm already running late.
All right,
So.
I'm going to say good night. God bless. God bless America, and ciao for now. Where's the closing video?
I don't have control to end the show. You have to click on end the show.
Are you fired up? Then take action. Copy the link to this episode and text it to one friend who needs to hear it. Support us where you found us by liking and subscribing for future content. This is a grassroots production supported by listeners like you.
Hey there.
Are you fired up? Then take action. Copy the link to this episode and text it to one friend who needs to hear it. Support us where you found us by liking and subscribing for future content. This is a grassroots production supported by listeners like